Alright, so a lot of people seem to like the first one, so I thought I'd make a second video just talking about the synopsis of Act 2, the Council of the Celestial Gods. This is pretty interesting. Alright, so in this frame there are about 4 celestial gods, but 2 of them are really unnamed, but the other 2 in the middle, the boy and the younger one, those 2 are really the main focus of the entire story. The conversations that they would have will go forth to shape the entire series. Alright, so the little boy over there, that is Quasi-Quaddle. His signature is basically feathers and serpents. Why the younger one over there is Tezcatlipoca. His signature is smoke, mirrors, and the night sky. Get a little bit of understanding as to why the city of Danibam fell. It was not that the sacrifices offered by the people of Danibam wasn't enough, but entirely like amongst Earth, there seems to be a blood drought, and the gods need the sacrifices in order to maintain their existence. So Mikantekuntli, out of that fear that there's no more sacrifices left, started abducting and claiming cities. And so the gods now are trying to discuss what exactly their next course of action will be. So one of the gods suggests that they do the same thing that Mikantekuntli is doing, just going to cities and just absolutely demolishing it and just taking sacrifices. But Quasi-Quaddle steps up and says, if we do exactly what Mikantekuntli is doing, then we're no better than him and the rest of the gods in the underworld. But Tezcatlipoca, who's someone who woke up and chose violence this morning, decides that we're not above this conflict, that we might as well just do the same. So we begin to see like a little bit of conflict between the celestial gods, as to what exactly the decision should be, the next course of action. So one of the other gods comes up with another suggestion, that they should use the Onyx gates to close up the gateway between Earth and the underworld. But Quasi-Quaddle was opposing to that idea, saying that we can't, that the invention or creation of the Onyx gates is exactly why we destroyed the Onyx people in the first place. And we have already seen what the Onyx gates are, and to some extent, the stones that Diania uses to attack some of the forces of the underworld is exactly that. So basically, there's some sort of god repellent that were invented by the Olmec people. They have the power to harm, damage, and even possibly kill a god or any force that is celestial or that is from the underworld. Tezcatlipoca, of course, likes this idea that if they are able to close all 5 gates with the Olmec stones, that will cut off the supply, that will cut off the connection between the underworld and Earth. And basically, that would starve out Mikantekuntli and the rest of the gods beneath, and leading to their non-existence. Whereas they would thrive and survive and continue to exist, and that would end the blood drought. And this is their definition of balance. Quasi-Quaddle, of course, reminds the other gods that if they're doing this, it's not necessarily balance that they're trying to achieve, that it's unfair. And Tezcatlipoca makes the point that this is not about balance, that it's about our survival. And so Quetzalcoatl was like, if this is all we all want, that he would be the one to go ahead and close the 5 gates. And of course, Tezcatlipoca opposes to that, saying that we can't trust him to do that because his twin brother serves Mikantekuntli, the god of the underworld. But Quetzalcoatl makes the point that if anyone at all was going to starve his brother out of existence, it should be him that does it and no one else. And so the other gods agree, and they give him the responsibility of closing the gates.
So be it. Quetzalcoatl, you are to close the 5 gates. Figure it out, quickly.
Alright, so Tezcatlipoca and Quasi-Quattl make their way to the first gate here in Danibam. So to basically close it off and start the plan. Then Tezcatlipoca decides to tell Quasi-Quattl of his plan. That is, he has decided that he was going to destroy all of humanity. Yeah, just like that. His reason for this is he has come to the conclusion that humanity has kind of waned and they have become vain. They fight among themselves, they wage wars against themselves, they become petty and greedy, and that their sacrifices really are wasted on the battlefield rather than given to them. And the reason why he's telling Quetzalcoatl this is because amongst all the other gods, Quetzalcoatl seems to be the one that's most attached to humanity, and in some sense seems to, I guess, like them. And so Quetzalcoatl reminds Tezcatlipoca that we've remade humanity about 4 times before. Like, has that really been of any benefit to us? Like, what's the overall point, in essence, that we have gained, or have they gained? And just judging from the story, having watched the first season, I don't think they have gained from remaking humanity, and I don't think humanity itself has learned or gained anything. Okay, and so in an attempt to close the first gate, Quetzalcoatl realizes that he can't because they are all made of the same stones, the Onyx stones, which have the power to like hurt the gods. And so he decides this is an opportunity to gain something. And so he turns to Tezcatlipoca and decides to make a bet. He says he would use a human to close the 5 gates. And to which Tezcatlipoca mocks, and he's like, before the equinox, like, that's absolutely impossible. That how can a human close the 5 gates? And Quetzalcoatl pushes this even further, saying that he would use the lowest of the low, the most unable person, to do it. And of course, Tezcatlipoca senses suspicion, and so he decides that he would use his own emissary to guide the human, to ensure that he sees this through, to watch over him, just to ensure there's no trickery, because he doesn't trust Quetzalcoatl. And of course, what's a good bet without good stakes? And so Tezcatlipoca asks, what are the stakes?
Our lives. Whoever wins gets the blood sacrifices of the other.
I'll take your bet. Who shall be your lowest of the low?
Oh, you'll see. Humanity's champion is nearly ready.
So whoever wins would claim the blood sacrifices of the other person. If Tezcatlipoca wins, in the sense that the human is unable to close all the 5 gates, then he claims all the blood sacrifices of Quetzalcoatl. But if Quetzalcoatl wins, that is, the human is able to close all the 5 gates, then he claims all the blood sacrifices of Tezcatlipoca. But not only that, if the human is unable to close the 5 gates, Tezcatlipoca also gets to enjoy the pleasure of destroying all of humanity, because again it proves his point that they are worthless and unable. And both gods disappear into, fade away and disappear into the distance. But unknowingly to them, there's been someone who's been paying attention to their conversation in secret. The camera then cuts and we're introduced to another character, Izel. And that's simply Act 2 for Episode 1. If you like it, just feel free to check it out in Crunchyroll. It's a really, really good animation. I mean, from the drawing to the animation, the art style, and the story, very, very rich. Alright guys, I'll see you around. Cheers.